It was a cold evening when I found myself staring at the clock, knowing that the conversation I was about to have could change everything. My palms were sweaty, my heartbeat raced, and I wondered, just for a second, if I should keep my dream to myself. But then I reminded myself, no dream worth chasing was built on silence. I just didn't expect the cost of speaking up to be so high. For as long as I could remember, there had always been a clear roadmap laid out for me, one I hadn't drawn myself. My parents were ambitious people, the kind who believed in structure, discipline, and success, measured by the weight of a paycheck or the prestige of a title. My father owned a small yet flourishing business, and my mother had devoted her life to making sure the family ran like clockwork. They had big dreams for me, dreams they never hesitated to remind me about. My future, in their eyes, was either as an heir to my father's business or as a professional in a respectable field like law or engineering. There was no room for imagination, no possibility outside of their carefully drawn box. But I knew, deep inside, that their vision didn't align with the fire burning within me. While they dreamed of boardrooms and stability, I dreamed of creating something that stirred the soul. I wanted my life to mean more than just ticking boxes on society's checklist. My passion was unconventional by their standards, and I knew I couldn't keep a secret forever. That night, over dinner, I decided to tell them the truth. My mother set down a steaming bowl of stew in front of me, and my father was engrossed in the newspaper. It felt like a regular evening, one of countless we had shared as a family. But for me, it was the night everything shifted. "I've been thinking a lot about my future," I began, my voice trembling slightly. Both of them looked up immediately, their attention fully on me. And I decided to follow my heart. I want to pursue a career in creative arts. The silence that followed was thicker than I had anticipated. My father blinked once, twice, and then folded the newspaper slowly, his brow furrowed in disbelief. My mother, who rarely struggled for words, simply stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "Art?" My father finally asked, his tone sharp and disapproving. "You're throwing away all the opportunities we've given you, for art." My pulse quickened. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but hearing the disappointment in his voice hit me like a ton of bricks. "You have to understand," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't just a hobby to me. It's what I love. It's what I'm meant to do." My mother finally found her words. "But how will you survive? How will you earn a living? Do you know how many people fail in careers like that?" Her voice was laced with worry, but it was clear that beneath her concern was frustration as well. "You always talk about passion and fulfillment," I countered. "Don't those things matter?" "Not when they come at the expense of practicality and stability," my father snapped, his voice louder now. What followed was a heated argument that drew lines I never thought we'd have to draw. Their dreams versus mine. Their fears versus my hopes. By the end of it, my father's face was hard as stone, and my mother's eyes were filled with tears. "If you go through with this," my father said, his words cutting through the air like a knife, "don't expect our support. You're on your own." Those words echoed in my mind long after the conversation ended. I didn't sleep that night, lying awake in bed and wondering if I had made a mistake by being honest. But the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that I couldn't betray myself just to keep the peace. If following my dreams meant losing my parents' support, then so be it. The next week, I packed my belongings and moved out. I found a tiny studio apartment that was almost comically small, and everything I owned barely filled the space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was the first step toward living on my own terms. The early days were brutal. I scraped by doing odd jobs to pay rent and used every free moment to work on my craft. I invested in books, online courses, and materials with the little money I had left. My art began to reflect not just my talent but my struggles, my loneliness, and most importantly, my determination. Still, there were nights when I lay awake questioning if I was making the right choice. Every small failure felt magnified without the safety net of my parents to catch me if I fell. But then came my first break. A small gallery downtown agreed to display some of my pieces. They weren't paying me much, but the validation of seeing my work on those walls was worth more than any paycheck. People began to take notice. A local writer bought one of my paintings and featured me in their column. Slowly, my name started spreading in the right circles. Momentum built like a wave. I began receiving commissions, invitations to collaborate, and eventually offers from bigger galleries. My work expanded to new mediums. I learned to design murals, create digital illustrations, and even work on community projects. For the first time in years, I felt I was living a life that was true to who I was. It wasn't easy, but it was meaningful. Despite my professional growth, the ache for my family never really went away. I missed them more than I cared to admit. Every success was bittersweet, knowing I couldn't share it with the people who once meant the most to me. I thought about reaching out but always hesitated, fearing rejection all over again. The turning point came completely out of the blue. One of my larger projects, a mural for a high-profile community center, garnered media attention. The local news covered the unveiling, mentioning my name prominently. A neighbor from my parents' street apparently saw the segment and told them about it. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my mother. Her handwriting was shaky, and the paper smelled faintly of her favorite lavender perfume. She wrote about how proud she was to see my work and how it had brought tears to her eyes. She apologized for not understanding my passion and admitted that she and my father had been too narrow-minded in their expectations. It wasn't an immediate reconciliation. It took time and effort to rebuild what we had lost. But the letter was the olive branch I hadn't dared to hope for. When we finally met in person, the air was heavy with unspoken emotions. My father, a man who rarely showed vulnerability, looked me straight in the eye and said, "I was wrong." That was all it took for the walls to come down. Rebuilding our relationship taught all of us the value of understanding and compromise. They learned to respect my choices, and I learned to appreciate the sacrifices they had made in their own lives. They've become some of my biggest supporters, attending exhibitions and proudly sharing my work with their friends. Looking back, I realized that being disowned by my parents was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, but it was also the turning point that defined me. It forced me to prove not just to them, but to myself that I was capable of building the life I wanted. It was a painful but necessary chapter in my story, one that has made every success taste that much sweeter. Chasing your dreams isn't always easy, and sometimes it means losing people along the way. But if you stay true to yourself and push through the hardships, you might just find that the love and respect you thought you'd lost can come back, stronger and deeper than before. And in the end, you'll look back and know it was all worth it.